welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of the Nonprofit Show. This is a really important topic because our guest today, Michael Maduro, he's a COO at Childhelp, is going to talk to us about corporate sponsorships and how we need to be thinking about this just beyond that check that we all think is going to solve all of our problems. And I think Michael's going to help us to understand a little bit a different way to go, right, Michael?
I'm going to do my very best.
Well, we are thrilled you are here. We are also thrilled because we have amazing partners. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, JMT Consulting, and Intuit QuickBooks. I'm super excited today because we have one of my faves, Ellie Hume. She is a regional director with Your Part-Time Controller and a super smart woman that really is such an asset to our co-host panelists. So I'm Julia C. Patrick. I'm not as important as Ellie, but I'm really excited you're here, Ellie, today. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Glad to be here with Michael.
Okay, Michael, you are the COO of Childhelp, and we are delighted you're here. We were talking in the green room. You've been with this organization for 15 years. What is the role of COO before we dig into things?
So the role of COO is really my responsibility is to build on the operational framework that represents and respects the deep dedication of our founders. It also scales and modernizes all of our programs and operations around the country, of which we have some very large programs. For example, the National Child Abuse Hotline operates in every single state, Canada, Guam, and all U.S. territories around the world, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We have the only evidence-based prevention education curriculum on the market today, designed to educate students pre-K through 12th grade, not only on the signs and symptoms of abuse, but what to do when they witness or experience abuse. That curriculum is sitting in about 30 different states around the country and about 13 different U.S. military bases around the world. We offer residential treatment facilities. We offer foster care and adoption care and relative care programming. We run multidisciplinary advocacy centers. Childhelp is arguably the most comprehensive organization in this space, not just around the country, but around the world. And my role as COO is to keep that operation thriving, scaling, and growing.
Yeah.
Whew, a lot. That's a big job.
It is.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's a fascinating story. And the Childhelp story. And I really want to kind of start there because I think if you could understand how Childhelp came to be, it's even more remarkable where you are today, because the founders are not your usual suspects, are they?
No, not at all.
Talk to us about that.
Childhelp started because of the incredible hearts of two amazing Hollywood starlets from the 1950s, Sarah O'Mara and Yvonne Feddersen. So these two women had Hollywood aspirations and careers, were on television shows. Some of your audience might remember the Ozzie and Harriet show back in the 50s and 60s. They were on those shows. They were married to Hollywood producers. They had thriving careers, but they both have a very, very deep love for our military. And they had an opportunity to audition to participate in entertaining troops on a USO tour following the Korean War. And that's what they did. They were both selected. If you listen to them tell the story, and I'm not going to get into that story because it'll take forever. But you're talking about two women who were living together, didn't even know each other was auditioning. They auditioned separately. They both got the role because they both looked like average American women. When you hear them tell the story, it's hilarious. But they went over, they entertained our troops, and they found themselves in Japan during the worst typhoon that had ever hit Tokyo at that point in time. And these two women were rebellious women and still are, but rebellious women still are. And I love that about them. But they found themselves with a little gap in the storm, and they went out, they snuck out of the hotel they were in, and they were kind of trying to navigate the streets, and they found a dozen children huddled together trying to stave off the wind and the rain. They brought these children into their hotel rooms. They dried them off, fed them, gave them some warm clothes. And they found out that these children were the result of American soldiers having relationships with Japanese women, and neither side wanting to claim these children. And these children were considered throwaway children, a term I can still think is an ugly term today. And so Sarah and Yvonne immediately went to work. How do we find help and support and care for these children? And no orphanage would be willing to take these children in because there was no financial compensation for these children because they weren't Japanese children. So Sarah and Yvonne were able to find one woman, her name was Mama Kim, to be able to take these children in exchange for making sure that not just those children, but the other children that were in the care of this home were taken care of. And they got the U.S. military to get behind not only caring for this orphanage, but building more orphanages and hospitals and schools. And they did that throughout Japan and into Vietnam. And then with the fall of Saigon and the U.S. military was pulling out, Sarah and Yvonne are like, what about these children? And they got in direct partnership with the U.S. military and commercial airlines what we know as Operation Babylift, where they directly rescued more than 3,300 children who would have lost their lives through the fall of Saigon, brought them to the United States, where they then had a waiting adoptive family for every single one of those children. That got the attention of then California Governor Ronald Reagan and his wife Nancy, who asked them to tackle America's best kept secret, that being child abuse. And so became the birth of innovative programs and services through the organization you know today as Childhelp, where through Sarah and Yvonne and Childhelp, every form of programmatic service delivery to children who either are experiencing or at risk of experiencing abuse and neglect was created.
It's truly remarkable. And knowing these two ladies as I have throughout my life, what you've touched on is just a small part. It's hard to believe, but what you touched on is just a small part of the story. And I really encourage anybody that's in this space or interested to go to the Childhelp website, because there's a timeline that's amazing, and it really explains, what they've done. There's been a Lifetime movie made about them. Yes. I mean, it's really amazing. Yvonne passed away at the beginning of this year. And yet the work continues, and the work is truly remarkable. So that's a fabulous framework for how we're going to have this discussion, I guess, because I guess where I'm coming from is, you know what you're talking about, Michael. That's right.
You've got a lot of history. You don't have many organizations that have been around for 67 years. And right now, Childhelp's been around for 67 years, operate profitably, 4-star Charity Navigator rating, perfect COA accreditation. This is an organization that's designed for impact. That's what Sarah and Yvonne set out to achieve when they first launched this organization, was how do we impact and change the lives of children who are at risk or are experiencing abuse? And that's still the heart of our mission today.
Yeah. So when we talk about this and we're talking about finding corporate partners, you advise us we need to start with that mission alignment. How does a company, and I'm just going to make something up, like they're selling tools or tires, or they're selling insurance or whatever, how do we get them to care about this and find alignment to your mission?
Well, real alignment happens when the company's core values naturally intersect with your mission, right? So when you take a look at organizations like In-N-Out Burger, that's one of our strongest partners. You're talking about an organization who has no problem representing their faith on the bottom of their materials, who see themselves as a really community-based, community-focused restaurant franchise, and they care about the community that they operate in. When we talk about corporate social responsibility for nonprofit organizations, that's what you're really looking for. You're looking for an organization that values the community in which their goods and services are produced and sold, in which their employees live, in which their families live, work, and play. A company that cares about community is a company that's going to care about the nonprofits that are making an impact and a difference in that community. And if you can find that intersection between those companies and your mission, that's gold.
How do you start your research to find those organizations? That's what fascinates me. Do they come to you and say, we're interested in what you're doing? Do you outreach? Where do you start in a situation like that, where you're trying to find those organizations that really care about the community that they're in?
There's a variety of different ways to do that. I mean, you can go to community events. So, most nonprofit organizations put on special events, and corporate partners sponsor those events, and they like to have their company displayed in the promotional materials leading up to that event and throughout that event. You could look at things like your local business journal that always identifies typically the top 10 to 50 corporate partners that are making a significant difference through nonprofits in the community. You can go to your different outreach groups, such as a Kiwanis group or a Rotary Club. There's always organizations that are looking to be a part of that. Chambers of Commerce are always, promoting organizations that support the community. So there's a variety of ways to find them. The real key is finding a company that really wants to make a difference as a partner versus a company that wants to have a transactional relationship with you. And so one of the speed bumps, I'll call it, that a lot of nonprofits run into is you'll get a company that typically is looking to advance their name and advance the sale or promotion of their goods and materials, which is not a bad thing. That's what they should be doing. That's all profit. But they look at the nonprofit as the arm of their marketing division, right? Yeah. So they take a look at, okay, nonprofits, we want you to push, our partnership, and we're going to measure the success of that based upon sales that we get from you. And based on those sales, we're going to give you a percentage. Those don't work very well because what ends up typically happening is the company gets disappointed because they're not generating as much sales as they expected to when they entered into this relationship. And the nonprofit isn't very satisfied because they're not really getting much of a return, yet they're leveraging all the resources that they possibly can muster to promote this one entity or this one relationship. And I've always found that those type of relationships fail because the objective wasn't clearly identified in the beginning. A metric of success wasn't identified in the beginning, and the why wasn't clear. And when that why isn't clear, it's not going to work.
Michael, I love the way you framed that up because I don't think there are very many nonprofits who haven't been in that situation and probably couldn't even articulate it as well as you just did, because it kind of gets icky really fast. Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to figure this out. So one of the pieces of advice that you have, which I just am fascinated by, is to say that you say, treat your partners like long-term investors.
Yep.
And we're using that more and more, right? That philanthropic investment, mentality. What does that look like to you?
Well, that goes back a little bit to the why element that I was talking about before. When I sit down with a corporate partner, there's thousands upon millions of nonprofit organizations that a corporate partner can align with. And when they do so, there's opportunities. You take a look at some that are very well recognized in household names and others that are grassroots and just starting up. The first question I always ask a nonprofit partner is why us? Why Childhelp? Why are you looking to align with an organization? And let's be honest, child abuse is not an issue that many people want to have some kind of direct personal connection to. I mean, most people, when they hear about child abuse, is, yeah, but it doesn't happen in my neighborhood. It doesn't happen in my community. It's never happened in I don't want to have anything to do with it. It's not the smiling kid on the television screen. It's not an easy topic to discuss. So why Childhelp? And what I find is the partners that last are the ones that sit there and say, because we understand the impact that your programs and services are making, and we truly value the life of a child and a family, and we want to see children who are experiencing that or at risk of experiencing that to no longer have those experiences, to have a childhood and a family life that is like mine or ideal or better than the situation, because they truly understand and believe in the mission is when and that's the why. And then it becomes, so my response back to them, going back to your question on investment, becomes, so if I can share with you the impact that your support is making, that is the return that you and I are both in agreement on we want to see. So for example, with Childhelp, you've got the National Child Abuse Hotline, which is the only hotline operating anywhere in the world 24/7, 365 by professionally degreed counselors, not volunteers, not paid employees that worked on some other service line or telecommunication. These are, and the reason that they're professional counselors is because the nature of the call that comes in. So right. When a child is calling in trauma, they need a professional counselor to be able to navigate that situation. Well, then the question becomes, well, how does that child even discover that hotline exists? Well, that's our prevention education curriculum, designed to educate students inside the classroom of what abuse is and what abuse is not. And when they make that connection, to be able to remind them that there's the immediate connectivity to a professional counselor. So when I can go to a corporate partner and I can tell them, for your investment in our prevention education curriculum, I'm going to share back with you the number of students that your company is directly responsible for protecting. So if you want to sponsor a school, you want to sponsor a school district, you want to sponsor a community, you want to sponsor a state, I can tell you the exact number of children that you are protecting. And then when a child makes a disclosure to a safe adult and says, I need help, I am identifying what I'm learning about with something that's happening in my own life, and that school or that district shares back with us, 10 students disclosed, 100 students disclosed, 1,000 students disclosed. I then, in a spirit of investment, can go back to that company and say, your effort to protect this school resulted in 100 students reaching out for help and support that our team is now able to provide life-saving programs and services for, and change the trajectory of their abuse and of their life because you invested it in us. Because you invested in us, we were able to protect these children in your name. That type of return on investment is what true corporate partnership looks like, at least with child.
Yeah. I love this. And I love that you have thought this through and that you're tracking this and that you're able to report back out. Talk to us about how you do this. Is it, we were saying in the green room, I think a lot of organizations report out impact when they go to ask for money, and they don't keep the flow of information going back and forth. It sounds to me like as well as you all do.
It's a relationship, right? I mean, I'm married to an incredible woman, and, I didn't just get lucky by talking to her one time and then I ignored her, right? It became a relationship.
Yeah.
And so with the relationship, you court, you share, you provide information, you provide back and forth, because what you're hoping for is that if you do something that is upsetting, so if I don't communicate enough, right? If I don't communicate enough with my wife at home, believe me, she lets me know. Right? It's the same thing with a corporate partner. You want to be able to have a strong enough relationship with your corporate partner that if they're just like, you know what, hey, Michael, we gave you a check 6 months ago. What happened? We have no idea. Did that money get to you? Did that money make a difference? Did it fill the need that we thought? Because you haven't communicated with us just makes us feel unimportant. It makes us feel used. It makes us feel like all we are to you is an ATM. And that's not the relationship that we entered into and that we wanted to have with you. That's what companies are saying when they're not talking to you. That's what they're saying. So when all of a sudden you're sending emails or you're making phone calls, it's like, wow, I'm not getting a call back right away. I'm like, yeah, because they're hurt, because they don't feel respected and valued, right? It's the same way you feel when you sit there and you're like, okay, I've got this major company. They want to support us. And the only thing they want to keep talking about is, so how are you going to promote our brand? How are you going to promote our product? We really want it. It's like, well, I want to promote the partnership. I don't want to just, right? So it's about communication. So for me, one of our staples is quarterly. So at the end of every quarter, we want to be able to send out a message and a communique to our corporate sponsors. Now some of them that give and are engaged in very deep and meaningful ways. Sometimes that communication is me calling them up and say, hey, can I take you to lunch? Can I take you to dinner? I'd love to be able to spend some time and break bread with you and share with you the impact that you are making. But I also want to listen. The biggest problem that nonprofit leaders have is we don't listen very well. We are so hungry to talk and to tell, I got this need and that need, and we want to do this and we want to do that and we want to grow here. And you can be a part of all of that. Failing to acknowledge the fact that, yeah, I didn't come to dinner with the hopes and desires of, can you please tell me more of where I should spend my money with you and how I should be investing with you? That's not the point of coming to dinner. What I listen for is, are we fulfilling everything that you were hoping to understand as far as impact is concerned? as far as our relationship is concerned? Am I the type of partner that you were hoping to align with when you sat down with your executive and your leadership team and said, what are we doing in the areas of corporate social responsibility?
Yeah.
Is this
Ellie,
Yeah. Michael, I want to ask you a question here, because you talk about being able to get back to the sponsors and tell them what their impact is, but that takes a lot of people to be able to measure that and stay in touch. And I know a lot of nonprofits around the country, not just the ones that listen to this show, but nonprofits in general really struggle with the capacity for building upon those relationships. Do you think that's a quality problem? They just need to focus on a few, or keep trying to get as many as they can and then figure out what the few to pay attention to is? I think it would be really helpful to understand the capacity issue that many organizations have around this, keeping that relationship going.
So at Childhelp, we've got a small but mighty philanthropy team. And we operate off of a simple philosophy: keep, lift, promote. And so our objective is, when somebody contributes to Childhelp and makes a donation to Childhelp, be it as a first-time donor or as a corporate sponsor, how do we retain them? What is it that they are looking for from their support and contribution to Childhelp? And then how do we lift them and promote them into higher levels of engagement? And that's the word I want to use, is engagement, because some people, it's not always just about what they can give from a treasure perspective, but it's relationships that they can also bring to the organization and share with the organization. And those relationships carry other resources and other tangibles and intangibles that are necessary for the organization. There's a variety of ways, especially in today's day and age with technology, to stay in touch. So a simple e-blast that you've got tickled into your system. It says, every quarter, I'm going to send an e-blast, and I'm just going to break it up into 3 tiers. For donors that are giving at our entry level up to a certain threshold, for those that are kind of giving at that mid-level threshold, and for those that are giving at our major threshold, they're each going to get a different type of communication. So all of them are going to get a basic e-blast that I can write, load in, and schedule. That's going to take me no manpower significance at all. I can do that early on. Those mid-levels, I'm going to lean into my team. So my team is going to reach on out there, and they're going to make some personal phone calls, and they're going to send, maybe I create a video. Maybe I do a quarterly video that sits there and says, it's a more of a general approach to all of our corporate sponsors, and say, hey, this quarter, we were able to bring on 6 new corporate partners. Thank you, A, B, C, D, and E. Appreciate your support. Also want to recognize those of you that have stayed with us for so long, and I might mention a few of those. Because of your collective support, this is what we've been able to achieve this last quarter, and this is where our focus is going into the next quarter. And then for our majors, that's when it comes onto the top leadership and brass, to be calling them up and say, hey, just wanted to give you a call. Don't want to interrupt your day. I just want to say thank you. And that right there is the thing that is most important, is just say thank you. Don't ask for more all the time. Share impact, share results, but say thank you genuinely, because you should genuinely be thankful, but genuinely say thank you. Just say, I was thinking about you today. Going all the way back to dating, right? When it was like, hey, how many times picking up the phone and saying, I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you today. Oh, carried with her all day long. Same thing for corporate executives.
I love how passionate you are about this right now. This is amazing.
It is amazing. It is amazing. Because, at the end of the day, no matter what we're doing with our work and our personal lives aside, we want to be filled with gratitude. We want that around us, right? And for somebody to say, wow, thanks, you made a difference, that's huge. And really impactful. And I love that you've talked about that. We don't have a lot of time left, but one of the things that you brought up, and I would love for Ellie and I to get your opinion on this, is how do you navigate those things beyond the check? And in essence, like volunteer opportunities or just educational opportunities or tours, or what does that look like to you? I mean, you're in a really interesting environment, because while you're across this planet with so much programming, you're also dealing with a sensitive topic where you can't just bring in visitors and have them on site and in all of these things. So how do you balance those other opportunities such as volunteerism?
So volunteerism is an amazing thing. Child Help was built historically on the backs of volunteers. We call
Yeah.
them chapters. And so we've got ballpark about a dozen chapters around the country. And these are people that, hey, we want to promote awareness for your programs and services. We want to raise money. And if there's an opportunity for us to engage directly with those that are being served, we look for those opportunities. For causes like child help, that's a little more complicated because we're
Yeah.
working with a very delicate population. So background checks and screenings and those things need to happen in order for a volunteer to engage directly with a child. And because of the red tape and the cumbersome nature of a lot of that, it's a deterrent, right? Because a lot of companies and corporations in particular, like, hey, we were looking to come on in for a day and maybe paint the fence, maybe stuff some backpacks,
Right.
things like that. Create those. We've got opportunities for that. So first and foremost, it's finding how people want to support you from volunteerism. And then are those real opportunities that can benefit and serve your organization? Now, like money, a lot of nonprofits will tend to, okay, I'm going to create something just to create something because I
Right.
want to hopefully build a relationship and develop that relationship. Well, you don't want to waste manpower, time, and resources on a one-off. Because companies and corporations, ideally, when they have a positive volunteer experience with you, they want to keep coming back. And you don't want to create something that's like, well, we really don't need that, or we really can't sustain that. And that becomes a waste of everybody's time and energy and support. But what you want to do is create meaningful opportunities, which again starts with listening. So when a company sits and says, I want to volunteer with Child Help, what exactly does volunteerism look like for your company? And here's what the opportunities are that are real for Child Help. Child Help has brick mortar operations in Southern California, Arizona, Tennessee, and Virginia. That's where we have brick mortar. So if it's, I want my employees to come down and hands-on touch, unless you're living within proximity of those states and those locations, I don't have that. So I'm not going to manipulate and create something that is not real and impactful. But I've got national programs that touch every single community. Is there something that we can do from an awareness volunteer type of a campaign that supports both of us, that yields greater attention in your community for our programs and services and allows your employees to engage in a meaningful way? And some of that might be the promotion of our prevention education curriculum into communities such as schools, after school programs, boys and girls clubs, churches, things like that, which brings in another partner, right? So now it brings in, who is that school? Who is that church? And this is when you start creating community alignment. And as you're building up those community alignment opportunities, that's where you can see real meaningful and impactful change. But the biggest challenge that comes with that is when nonprofits are like, but I want to be the only focal point. I don't want to share the spotlight. And let's be honest, there's a lot of them out there, right? That becomes it's why there's so many nonprofits. When I talk around the country, I usually get asked the question, what is the number one problem with nonprofits? And I always answer it the exact same way. There's too many of us. And the reason is because you've got somebody that has a great heart, a great intention, but they want to control the way the delivery of program and service is provided. And they want recognition personally for it. So instead of directing all of the resources that they could bring to another organization that's already doing that work exceptionally well and doing the job of finding who's doing this really well and how can I support them, it's let me create my own. And all that does is take greater disparity of the vast resources we're all trying to share and use to make a common benefit or a common good or significant change.
That can be a whole conversation.
Oh, 100%. I talk about that all the time.
For the show.
I love it.
Oh,
well, this has been amazing. Michael Maduro has joined us today. He's the COO of Child Help. Really an interesting organization. You can learn more about childhelp.org. And where they started and where they are, how they leveraged the personalities of the founders is a fascinating story. But I think it's also a fascinating story of a team that looked at what was going on at any given point in the history of our nation and then really started working to find solutions. And so if you're an organization that's wondering about the trajectory of your own history and where you are, this is a great place to learn about how an organization has been able to navigate that. Michael, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the leadership that you provide. We're in the same community. We have a lot of things that have linked across our lives, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your show. I appreciate it greatly. Thank you to your listeners for what they do to contribute to the show and to allow this show to be possible, and for the support that they're giving to so many different nonprofit organizations. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, you've been lovely, and I think, Ellie, it's always fun for the two of us to have somebody with so much energy and passion, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I loved it, your tip about like just listen to what your sponsors want. They'll tell you how to be a good partner. That is, I think, the key to success. And I appreciate you sharing that story. And maybe Julia, we'll have another show and we can talk about all the nonprofits that need to be thinking about consolidating because everybody's trying to do it differently.
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, what the number that we use on the nonprofit show is 1.9 million registered nonprofits, and that comes through the IRS in our country. And that's a lot of, if you will, a large competitive set. And so, yeah, absolutely. That's a topic that we do need to drill down on further. We get to drill down on amazing topics each and every day because we have phenomenal presenting sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, JMT Consulting, and Intuit QuickBooks. These are the people that make the difference behind the scenes so that we can have these fabulous conversations like we've had with Michael and Ellie today. As we leave each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we leave with this message, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. We'll see you again.